During the late 80s and the early 90s, Mitsubishi and Chrysler had a partnership where they would build certain cars on a shared platform. These cars would later be known as the DSMs. DSM stood for Diamond Star Motors, and they would later on release cars like the Plymouth Laser, Eagle Talon, and the famous Mitsubishi Eclipse. Later on, the second gen Eclipse would be famous because of the movie The Fast and the Furious, and surely everyone wanted one, including you, since you clicked on this video. As famous as it may be, it does suffer from certain issues. So if you're thinking of buying a Mitsubishi Eclipse, what would be the things to look out for? I did the research so you don't have to. Here are the most common issues of the Mitsubishi Eclipse. Keep in mind we'll be covering both the DSMs and non-DSM Eclipses. Oil and leaks. If you are inspecting an Eclipse, make sure to check the bottom of the oil cap. As expected, it should be covered with oil, but if it looks like it has a milky foamy substance on it, this could be a sign of a blown head gasket. The seal separating the cylinder head and the engine block might have failed, causing a coolant leak. As a result, the coolant gets mixed with the oil, causing it to have that milky foamy tan color. You might also want to check for oil leaks because the 2G Eclipse is an old car. A common area where you might find an oil leak on an Eclipse is on the valve cover. If it does have an oil leak there, the valve cover might have cracked on the inside. Transmission issues. If you've done a fair bit of research on the Eclipse, you might know by now that one of its biggest downfalls is transmission failure, and it does happen even to low mileage examples. A common cause of this is the wave cushion spring might have failed in the transmission. Little particles will circulate throughout the system, causing heavy damage in the automatic transmission. If that is the case, you will either have to get the transmission replaced or rebuilt. Either way, it won't be a cheap, easy fix. There have also been reports of drivers having a difficult time shifting in a manual transmission. The main culprit of difficult shifting is either a defective clutch disc or a bad clutch pressure plate. If one fails, the whole manual transmission is affected. Which leads me to clutch problems. Mitsubishi Eclipse models between 1995 and 2008 have been known to have clutch problems. Some owners have complained that they notice a rattling noise when their car is idle. This would later on turn out to be a bad clutch pressure plate. While pressing down on the clutch pedal, you would hear that rattling creaking noise if the pressure plate is on its way out. You may also need to get the spring alignment checked out in your clutch disc for wear. Rust. Just like any old car, the Mitsubishi Eclipse also suffers from rust. Common areas where rust may form on an old DSM Eclipse are on the strut towers and rocker panels. While you're checking for rust, it's also a good idea to be extra vigilant. Go the extra mile by checking the whole car for rust, even the underside of the car. Brake system problems. Many owners of Eclipses between 2006 and 2009 have complained about their brakes not functioning properly or locking up while in use. They would notice their ABS light up or go out when their brakes are engaged. This is usually what a brake system failure is like. Common symptoms include leaking brake fluid and spongy brake pedals. Mitsubishi would later on try to fix this issue with a recall of certain Eclipses that had been fitted with defective brake boosters and master cylinder assemblies. Wiring issues. This one is not really caused by the car itself, but rather the previous owner who didn't really know what they were doing. They would try to fix worn out wiring in the car, but instead, they would actually make it worse. So if you see any type of messy wiring in the engine bay or inside the car, it's best to walk away from it because it can be a headache to fix and they tend to cause issues over time. The lower control arms. If the Eclipse you're checking has been lowered, it might be a good idea to check the lower control arms, as lowering it with either lowering springs or coilovers would put a lot of stress on it. If not checked, the lower control arms and the ball joints will give up on you if they're on their way out. Your wheels will tuck in and basically mess up your side fender. This can be very dangerous because this can happen at any speed. So even if the previous owner said he recently changed the lower control arms and the ball joints, it's a good idea to just change them anyway. It will give you more peace of mind. These are just some of the most common issues you may face if you're considering buying a Mitsubishi Eclipse. Even if it has its issues, once you fix them, it can be one of the most rewarding cars you will ever drive. But be prepared to work on it. as Mitsubishi Eclipses can be temperamental. Anyway, by owning one, you will be driving an icon and a piece of history. Are there any more issues we didn't cover in this list? I would love to know in the comment section below. Also, if it's not an Eclipse you want, instead you're in the market for a Honda S2000, I made a video last time on the common things you will need to check when buying one. And with that being said, thanks for watching, keep safe, and I'll see you on the next video.